Welcome to The Explainer. Today we're diving into a case that is just deeply chilling. It's incredibly complex. We're talking about a mystery that started with quiet whispers of people going missing, and it spiraled into a massive, multi-state manhunt. We're going to unravel the anatomy of a confession that literally shook law enforcement to its core. So, let's look closely at the timeline, the evidence, and the really disturbing psychology of the suspect at the center of what became known as the Red Truck Mystery.
Let's start right here, because this poignant quote really sets the stage for exactly how this whole thing began. I am very concerned about Matthew's whereabouts. Very concerned. That's from Detective Turney out in Grants, New Mexico. See, a 21-year-old named Matthew Miller goes missing in late January, and his grandmother is absolutely terrified. Now, the detective knows Matthew is tied up in the local addiction scene, and right away his gut tells him this isn't just someone skipping town. Listen to that grim repetition. Very concerned. That tells us the stakes were incredibly high from day one.
But here's the thing, Matthew wasn't the only one. Almost immediately, this investigation expands. Suddenly, we have three missing people in the small town of Grants: Matthew Miller, Justin Mada, and Jennifer Lannon. And the absolutely crucial point to understand here is that all three are connected. They ran in the exact same circles, a circle unfortunately defined by severe opioid addiction, and that made them incredibly vulnerable targets. So when Jennifer's mother calls all the way from New Jersey to report she hasn't heard from her daughter in weeks, police realize, wow, we aren't looking for one missing person anymore, we're looking for three. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is the sheer audacity of the prime suspect here, Shawn Lannon. He was Jennifer's ex-husband. When police bring him in, Shawn spins this super confident, really casual story. He claims, oh, I just borrowed Matthew's truck to take my kids to McDonald's. But look at the stark contrast with the surveillance reality. Cameras actually caught Shawn abandoning that exact same truck at a local apartment complex and just walking away. And it gets worse. When police execute a search warrant on Shawn's house, they find out he had recently ripped up the carpet in one of the bedrooms. I mean, the lies were just piling up so fast.
And from there, the timeline just accelerates into this incredibly tight, urgent sequence of events. Okay, so March 3rd. A red Ford pickup truck is parked at the Sunport Airport in Albuquerque. Less than 12 hours later, on the morning of March 4th, Shawn boards a flight to New Jersey with his three young kids. By that very night, airport parking security starts noticing a deeply suspicious, foul smell coming from that same red truck. This tiny, brief window of time leads police to the most gruesome discovery of their entire careers. What officers find in the bed of that truck is just horrifying. Carefully packed inside these plastic storage bins are dismembered human remains. They find a male torso in one bin, an intact female body in another, and a second male torso with a blade literally still lodged right in the ribcage. Right alongside all of this, bloody hand tools. Ultimately, forensics would identify these remains as those three missing people from Grants: Jennifer Lannon, Justin Mada, and Matthew Miller. So the police have finally found their missing persons, right? But that brings us to a really shocking question. Who is the dead man in the passenger seat? Because inside the cab of the truck, stuffed under the passenger seat and wrapped up in a tarp, is a fourth victim. This poor individual had suffered massive trauma to the face. He'd been bludgeoned with a short-handled sledgehammer that they found right underneath him.
This fourth victim turns out to be Randall Apostolon. He was actually the registered owner of the red truck. Randall was a guy who also struggled with addiction and had recently been living out of his vehicle. And you guys, his tragic inclusion in this case basically came down to incredibly bad luck. He just happened to be at a Family Dollar store when Shawn Lannon was frantically looking for someone with a truck to help him move some storage bins. Yeah, the very same bins that already contain the dismembered bodies of Shawn's first three victims.
With 4 bodies now discovered, this manhunt shifts all the way across country. Remember how Shawn flew to New Jersey on March 4th? Well, back on the East Coast, a woman named Carol calls her local police for a wellness check on her 66-year-old friend, Michael Dubcowski. Now, Michael happened to be Shawn Lannon's childhood mentor through the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. Carol hadn't heard from him at all, and his phone line was just ringing busy.
When police force their way into Michael's locked garage, the multi-state manhunt instantly escalates. 66-year-old Michael Dubcowski is found bludgeoned to death on the floor, surrounded by blood with a towel thrown over his face. And to make matters worse, Michael's vehicle is completely missing. Shawn Lannon had struck again. He took a 5th life and fled the scene in the victim's stolen car.
So let's trace Shawn's final desperate movements right across the country. After somehow escaping local police surveillance in New Jersey, he actually used the guise of going to a job interview to slip away. He fled westward in Michael's stolen SUV. law enforcement tracks his phone, and finally, on the early morning of March 10th, U.S. Marshals capture Shawn Lannon in St. Louis, Missouri. The arrest is surprisingly quiet, totally without incident. But inside that stolen SUV, they find bloody clothing and a hammer.
Once he's sitting in that interrogation room, Shawn doesn't ask for a lawyer. He just starts talking. And his confession, it is chilling in its sheer emotionlessness. Delivering this line in a totally flat, matter-of-fact tone, he tells detectives exactly how he murdered his ex-wife. I put the pistol behind her head and I pulled the trigger. There is no panic. There are no tears. It's just this mechanical recounting of taking a human life. And this starkly reveals the terrifying, twisted logic inside Shawn's head. Let's really break down his stated motives for these 5 murders, because it is terrifyingly casual. He claimed he killed Jennifer and Justin because he caught them allegedly drugging his kids and blowing heroin smoke in their faces. What about Matthew Miller? Shawn says Matthew simply just showed up looking for money and was eliminated because he was an inconvenience. Randall? He was bludgeoned to death in broad daylight just for demanding extra hush money. And Michael Dubcowski was murdered for alleged, entirely unverified childhood abuse from their time in the Big Brothers program.
And when it comes to Michael's murder, the psychological profile of Shawn Lannon takes an even darker turn. When detectives press him on beating a 66-year-old man to death, Shawn's response is this isolated, absolutely chilling phrase, "I'm proud of that." He tells police that Michael could have just handed over some old photos, but since they fought, Shawn felt entirely justified in taking his life. The sheer lack of empathy for his former big brother is just staggering.
But wait, just when detectives think they finally have the full picture of Shawn's terrifying spree, he drops this staggering number on them, 11. Shawn calmly claims to investigators that over the past 2.5 years, he murdered 11 other people who had come to his house to harm Jennifer. 11 victims that nobody has seemingly reported missing. 11 victims that the police know absolutely nothing about. No way, right?
So the obvious, crucial question is, where are these bodies?
Well, Shawn claims he dumped these 11 victims into the El Malpais lava tubes. Now, if you don't know, this is a remote, incredibly harsh and strenuous cave system in New Mexico. It is notoriously difficult to navigate. The implications of this are horrific for sure, but it's really important to note that investigators remain highly skeptical of this whole story. Shawn had given conflicting stories to friends before about, dissolving bodies in acid, and to this day, police have not found a single trace of human remains in those caves. Which brings us to the totality of justice served in this massive case. Shawn Lannon ultimately took plea deals across both jurisdictions. In New Mexico, his charges were reduced to second-degree murder, landing him 15 years for each of the 4 victims found in that truck, totaling 60 years. Then, in New Jersey, he pleaded guilty to the first-degree murder of Michael Dubcowski, securing an additional 35 years. All told, that is a staggering 95 years behind bars, so we know for a fact he will never walk free again.
But as we wrap up this explainer, we are left with a really haunting question. Will we ever know the real truth about those 11 supposed victims? Furthermore, Shawn's own mother pointed to his military deployment to Kosovo, where he apparently witnessed horrific atrocities and ethnic cleansing, as the exact moment he lost his faith and changed forever. So did that untreated trauma completely fracture his mind? Or is this just another layer of deception from a highly calculated killer? It's a profound darkness that really highlights the devastating intersections of trauma, addiction, and violence in our society. What do you think? Keep questioning, keep learning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.